Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. You're on the Bible Forum. It's Sunday night, October 29th. It's the last Sunday in October. Halloween is on Tuesday. Next Sunday is the day we put our clocks back. You don't put your clock back, you're going to be early for church. And you really don't want to be early for church. Welcome to the Bible Forum. We've got a lot of stuff we want to talk about tonight. A whole list of things. If you have gone to our website, thebibleforum.net, you have seen the list. These things are, there's a, why won't that do that? Okay. I'm trying to get my monitor to come up into full boom here, and it didn't want to work. If you went to the, if you get the email, looks like this. You know what we're going to talk about tonight. We might run out of time before we run out of topics. I'm not quite sure how this is all going to work out. I actually have an extra something that I didn't share with you, and I'm going to wait and see how the evening unfolds as to whether I want to do that or not. But we got a lot of things that we want to talk about. At the first break, I want to share with you some personal things, and then we'll go from there. As this week has unfolded, there has been a lot of little things that have popped up, and one of those things has to do with truth. You know, truth is a very funny animal. It has a funny way of prevailing no matter what. And when it does, it ends up being embarrassing. And we've got some politicians and some lawyers and some other people in our world that have experienced this firsthand. Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller has apparently charged some people in regard to the so-called Russia scandal. The subpoenas are going to be handed out, I guess, tomorrow or whatever. It's going to be interesting to see who it is that gets subpoenaed and why. It's not known exactly what the charges are. The judge has ordered them sealed, but CNN is reporting that there were plans for anyone that is charged to be taken into custody immediately. That's going to be an interesting thing to watch. Mick Mulvaney is the head of the Office of Management and Budget in the Trump administration. He was talking at Georgetown University at their Institute in Politics and Public Service about tax cuts for the rich. The folks there, you know, that Georgetown it's a liberal school. And the audience was asking him about the tax cuts for the rich. You know what he told them? He said the lowest earning people in America, that's about 40% of us, pay no taxes at all. In fact, he says they get money back. They get money from the government even though they haven't put any money in. He said those in the middle, often described as the middle class, pay an effective rate that is in the low single digits. So where does all the money come from? It comes from the top two groups, he said, which pay almost 95% of all taxes. Isn't that interesting? The reality here is that 20% of the earners pay 95% of all the taxes that are paid, and they're all in the upper tier. They're not down here with us common folk. You wouldn't know that listening to liberals, listening to the news, but that's what the man who is dealing with all of this, has delved into the numbers, is telling us. Muslims continue to terrorize Christians in Nigeria. We don't hear about this on a regular basis. In Nigeria, the Christians make up about 51.3% of the entire population. The Muslims are in a kind of a minority. They are primarily in the north and the middle of the country. They account for about 45% of the population. But apparently the Muslims are routinely raiding the villages of the non-Muslims. In a recent attack, they destroyed 8 houses. This began on October 8 and went uninterrupted for almost 2 weeks. They killed 48 Christians, according to the survivors. All in all, 13 villages were attacked in 9 days. The church elder in Plateau State, Nigeria, saw the Muslim Fulani herdsmen storm into his village about 11 o'clock at night on October 13th, and they were shooting in all directions. He said, every one of us ran to save our lives. He is the pastor, the elder of an evangelical church in Zenrua. I don't know how to pronounce that. He said, I was shot, but the bullet only bruised my hand. In the past few weeks, our people, he said, have been attacked by peace-loving Muslim Fulani herdsmen, interested only in worshiping their God in peace, who are collaborating with armed terrorists to invade the communities that are non-Muslim. He said these attacks are being carried out daily. Every blessed day, he said, we witness the invasion, the killing of our people, and the destruction of our houses. Do we hear that on the news? Not very much. Vice President Mike Pence announced Wednesday last week that President Trump had ordered the State Department to shut down all funding for the ineffective, his word, ineffective United Nations programs that help persecuted Christians in the Middle East, saying that the administration, the Trump administration, is going to take over those efforts directly. He said, from this day forward, America will provide support directly to persecuted communities through a program that is known as USAID, USAID. Mr. Pence said that the defense of Christians is the most important thing he can think of. And at this particular dinner, which was all about solidarity for the defense of Christians, he said, we will no longer rely on the United Nations alone to assist persecuted Christians and minorities in the wake of the genocide and the atrocities of these terrorist groups. He said Christians have become victims of a genocide at the hands of the Islamic State all across the Middle East. He called it a sad reality that the UN spends about $1 billion a year on humanitarian aid in the region that doesn't help Christians hardly at all. This past week, the Israeli military announced that they were finding rockets being fired into their country from neighboring Syria. The Israeli military expert that was interviewed said this cannot be by accident. He said, we understand an errant tank or mortar battery when there's a battle raging just 2 miles from our border, but a rocket? Analysts are looking at Syria returning to a somewhat normal existence in the next year or so, and with that change comes a redirection of attention. Iranian Defense Chief Mahmoud Bagheri signed a memorandum of understanding with his Syrian counterpart as Assad, aided by Russia and Iran, has gained strength over the past year. Malka added, authorities on the Golan Heights have been preparing for an end of the relative quiet that has prevailed in that area. And his prediction is that after the civil war in Syria dies out, the guns are going to be turned on Israel. The real landlord in Syria, the Russians, cannot stop this. And the Americans are not there, he said. Therefore, he warned there's a possibility of a significant escalation in the north of Israel, Golan Heights. For now, at least, it doesn't seem there's anybody who can stop the spread of Iran's influence in the region. Russia may be willing to turn a blind eye to the next Israeli airstrike, but that won't torpedo Iran's plan for Syria, which includes a broad and lasting military presence. The powerful crown prince of Saudi Arabia, a younger version, a new leader coming up, said last Tuesday that it was his purpose, his goal, to abandon the kingdom's extreme brand of Islam, a brand of Islam that has inspired terrorists around the world. We're going to return, he says, to what we were before, a country of moderate Islam that's open to all religions and to the world. He was talking to an economic forum in the capital city, Riyadh. He said, "We will not spend the next 30 years of our lives dealing with destructive ideas. We will destroy them today," he said. "We will end extremism very soon." The 32-year-old crown prince is going to succeed the 81-year-old King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud when he dies, or should he abdicate the throne. And the crown prince is already seen by the world as a reformer who is believed to have persuaded the king to lift the ban on Saudi women driving just last month. In the 1970s, Saudi Arabia began promoting a fundamentalist form of Islam known as Wahhabism, which applied a strict interpretation of the Quran with extreme punishments such as decapitation and amputations for crimes. As the birthplace of the Islamic prophet Muhammad, Saudi Arabia exerts tremendous influence among Muslims. Wahhabism, named for the 18th century cleric Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, also inspired terrorists with calls to kill Christians, Jews, and others who reject Islam, according to the Huffington Post. 15 of the 19 hijackers in the September 11th terrorist attack on our World Trade Center were Saudis.